after the meh reception of the first live-action GI Joe movie, the studio clearly wanted to go bigger with the sequel. So what did they do? They brought back a Joe fan favorite who'd been glaringly missing the first time around, Roadblock, and cast none other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to lead a new team of Joes as a ninja commando. Yeah, okay. Is it really any surprise that this retaliation led us straight into yet another reboot? Now, that movie had plenty of issues, but I'd argue one of its biggest was pretty simple. They just didn't get it. Because if they really wanted a Rock leading the Joes, they should have gone with this one. Do you know what a Rhodes Scholar is? It's one of the most prestigious academic honors in the world, a scholarship that sends only the best of the best to study at Oxford University. And if you know anything about Oxford, you know it's not exactly an easy place to get into, much less excel in. It takes a certain kind of person, disciplined, determined, laser-focused, someone who doesn't just work hard but lives for the challenge. People like that are rare, and when they set their sights on something, success usually isn't a question, it's an expectation. Now, imagine someone with that kind of drive and intellect, a Rhodes Scholar, top of his class with a degree in English literature, trading in the quiet halls of academia for the chaos of the battlefield, channeling that same discipline and precision not into essays or lectures, but into surviving and excelling through airborne school, ranger school, special forces school, and finally flight warrant officer school, graduating each with honors. That, in a nutshell, is Flint, GI Joe's warrant officer, scholar, soldier, and proof that brains and bronze don't have to live in separate worlds. To the casual fan, Flint is one of the leaders of America's highly trained Special Mission Force, or, Lady Jaye's boy toy. But there's a lot more to Flint than that. So to get the ball rolling, or in Flint's case, to get the sparks flying, what exactly is a warrant officer? Because if you're anything like me, the first thing that comes to mind with the word warrant is that awesome 80s band singing about heaven not being too far away. Rest in peace, Janie Lane. But no, in military terms, a warrant officer isn't a rock star, though they might as well be. They're the military's go-to technical experts, the specialized problem solvers who bridge the gap between the troops and the brass. They're not bosses, they're masters of their craft. While commissioned officers focus on strategy and planning, warrant officers are the ones who make those plans actually work. They sit in that sweet spot where real experience meets real responsibility. If the Army were a business, the commissioned officers would be the CEOs setting the vision, and the warrant officers would be the ones who actually know how everything works. They're the pilots, the tacticians, the specialists, the ones who keep the machine running when things get messy. In short, they're not just soldiers, they're the glue that holds the mission together. And when it comes to Flint, that's exactly his lane. He's a tactical planner through and through. The kind of guy who can read a battlefield, map out a solution, and then personally lead the charge. According to his file card, Flint drafted and led over a dozen covert rescue operations deep into hostile territory. Missions so classified they were never acknowledged, much less publicized. He's the guy who plans the impossible and then actually pulls it off. Or as one Rescue Joe once put it, "We thought Cobra had us locked in that stinking dungeon for good. Then we heard the chopper coming in and the hardware going off like the 4th of July. Next thing we know, the door blows open and there's Flint with that lopsided grin singing, 'Come on boys, we're going home.'" So, like a lot of 80s kids, my first introduction to Flint wasn't through the toys or the comics. It was on TV, specifically in the 1984 GI Joe sequel miniseries, The Revenge of Cobra. And right from the start, Flint takes charge, taking command of the Joe team after Duke gets captured in the opening battle. And from there, he's thrown straight into his own full-blown side adventure. Flint teams up with fellow newcomer Mutt and his dog Junkyard, and the trio instantly find themselves in one of the most random yet perfectly GI Joe sequences ever. Thanks to Destro's Weather Dominator, they crash into a pit full of killer strangler vines, fight their way out, commandeer a Stinger Jeep, some Cobra soldier duds, and stumble into a seedy Cobra-controlled bar. Get into a bar fight, come across some dude named Shipwreck, who takes him across the desert on his sand skiff only to run into, what else? A huge sandstorm because, no Joe mission is complete without a natural disaster. Which of course they escape, before finally making it back to Joe headquarters, dusty, bruised, but more than ready for the final round. The Revenge of Cobra also gave us the debut of what some regard as Flint's better half, Lady Jaye. Because like peanut butter and chocolate, mac and cheese, or lasers and explosions, some things just belong together. Now, while the show never went overboard with the romance, flirty shipwreck moments, and bikini-clad Baroness interactions aside, the chemistry between Flint and Lady Jaye was definitely there. It started off subtle, teased here and there, and eventually became one of the most natural, easygoing relationships in the entire series. Throughout the cartoon's run, the two were always looking out for each other, whether it was Flint rescuing Lady Jaye from a secret underground cult in skeletons in the closet. Though honestly, the only thing I vividly remember from that episode was this. Or Lady Jaye saving Flint after he gets hypnotized by Cobra during Flint's vacation. And of course, who could forget that blink and you'll miss it moment during the evacuation of Cobra La in GI Joe, the movie. Their connection was built on mutual trust, shared respect, and the classic 80s, we're not saying it, but everyone knows, kind of love story. In fact, it's heavily implied and later confirmed by the writers that the two eventually got married, because years later in the Transformers cartoon of all places, we meet their daughter, Marissa Fairborn, a member of the Earth Defense Command, or EDC for short, and a frequent ally of the Autobots. And while her parents are never mentioned by name, her father, or at least an illusion of him, makes a cameo voiced by the same voice actor that brought Flint to life in the GI Joe cartoon. And since I mentioned it, let's talk about the voice. Look, I'll admit, to set the record straight, Flint's just okay with me. I've always been more in Camp Duke, 6'2", eyes of blue when it comes to my favorite GI Joe leaders. But even I can't deny how awesome Flint's voice is. That charismatic, confident, and commanding tone, sometimes even bordering on arrogant, perfectly fits the character. Or for my Filipino viewers, sorry for being a little crass, but that laglag banty type of voice. All thanks to the man behind it, Bill Ratner. Seriously, if you ask me, it's right up there with other iconic Joe voices like Cobra Commander and Duke, voiced by the legendary Chris Latta and Michael Bell, respectively. And speaking of those two, I always found it funny that the top dogs of GI Joe were also the same voices behind the second-in-command dudes over in Transformers, Starscream and Prowl. Also, another funny bit is that while Duke originally starts the miniseries intros with the Yo Joe battle cry, Flint takes over that role in the regular series intros, but the voice remains as Duke, cause, money saver? But I digress. Unlike those two voice legends who left their mark across both franchises, Flint's voice is purely GI Joe. Bill Ratner's only Transformers credit is when he returned to voice the previously mentioned Daddy Flint. Speaking of which, Flint would make his grand debut in the GI Joe comics by Marvel in issue number 37, where he shows the Crimson Twin Xamot exactly who his daddy was by pummeling him on top of a roller coaster track. That same issue also marks the first meeting between Flint and Lady Jaye, where Flint proudly proclaims that he's there to class up her act. Yeah, let's just say that first impression didn't exactly sweep her off her feet. What did impress her came a few issues later in issue number 53, when Flint single-handedly took on an entire battalion of Cobra Eels so that Lady Jaye could escape and warn the rest of the Joes about a surprise attack on the GI Joe headquarters. He was seriously injured and nearly executed in the process, but that act of bravery definitely earned him some serious points with Lady Jaye, and well, a definite lug-lug. Okay, I'll stop there. From that moment on, her perception of Flint shifted from an arrogant field leader to a man she could trust, respect, and fight beside. And as I said, their partnership would grow into one of the Joe franchise's strongest and most believable romantic arcs. I mean, if your partner could do this, you'd probably stay in line too. Just kidding. That punch came during a tense moment in a storyline where Snake Eyes and Scarlet, during what was supposed to be a double-date vacation with Flint and Lady Jaye, faked their own deaths to carry out a secret mission to rescue fellow Joes from a Barovian gulag. Obviously butthurt over the deception, Flint angrily confronts the two when they resurface, prompting Lady Jaye to literally knock back some sense into him. It was a rare emotional lapse for the usually composed Flint, but also a reminder of how grounded their relationship was. Lady Jaye kept Flint human, and she kept him balanced. Unfortunately, she wouldn't be there forever. Years after the original Marvel series ended, a new publisher, Devil's Due, set out to continue the Joes story. Their series picked up as a direct sequel to the Marvel run, set years after Cobra had been defeated and the Joe team had been decommissioned. By this time, Flint and Lady Jaye had settled down and gotten married. Flint, now older and more mellow, spent most of his days writing his memoirs, chronicling his life with GI Joe. But when Cobra inevitably comes back, the Joes are reinstated with both Flint and Lady Jaye being called back to active duty, and it is in the line of duty that Lady Jaye, the center of Flint's universe, unfortunately falls. Lady Jaye is killed, murdered before Flint's eyes by the Red Shadow agent Della Eden, and the loss shatters him. Consumed by grief and rage, Flint goes rogue, tracking the Red Shadows across the globe until he finally confronts Della Eden in their stronghold. When the moment came, he had the chance to kill her, but he didn't. Even at his lowest moment, Lady Jaye's influence still guided him. His moral compass, though cracked, hadn't broken. Still, Flint was a completely changed man. The once articulate, confident officer had become grim, silent, and emotionally scarred, both literally and figuratively. His trademark grin was gone, replaced by a haunted expression and the battle scars of someone who'd lost more than most could bear. He advocated overwhelming force, distanced himself from the team, and buried his pain beneath relentless training and vengeance. In the end, it was Lady Jaye's lasting presence, her memory, and her influence that pulled him back from the brink. Flint slowly found his footing again, overcoming his anger and grief to return to the Joes, where he played a key role in the climactic series-ending event, World War III. Not long after that, the GI Joe license moved to IDW, and in a complete boss, or if you're Devil's Due, dick move, they brought back the legendary Larry Hama, the original writer of the classic Marvel run, to continue his version of the story, effectively rendering all of Devil's Due's continuity non-canon. And while that sucked for Devil's Due, whose take on the Joes I genuinely think was pretty good, it was actually great news for Flint, because in Hama's world, Lady Jaye never died. Now, to be honest, as far as I know, in Hama's continued series for IDW, Flint and Lady Jaye didn't really play major roles in any of the key arcs. Sorry, please do let me know if I missed something though, as Hama was a little busy resurrecting Serpentor and killing him off again, along with Snake Eyes, replacing him with not one but two successors, and then, in true comic book fashion, bringing the original guy back with a pristine face and the power of speech. Wait, what? Snake Eyes can talk now? Yeah, just check out my story on Snake Eyes for more deets on that. I'll place a link in the description below. And speaking of descriptions, how would you like to be described as that person wearing a really awesome GI Joe t-shirt? In case you haven't noticed, YouTube has been giving content creators like myself the ability to tag related products on our videos for all of you. So if you want a shirt with Flint's classic artwork plastered on the front, or any other Joe-related stuff, why not try out my linked items on this video and get yourself some cool merch and help me out as well. My channel ends up getting a little extra income, and you end up looking really cool. It's a win-win for everybody. Anyway, over in IDW's own separate GI Joe universe, Flint was much more of an active player. This version of the Joes was a little more grounded, more real-world, more modern, but still stayed pretty faithful to what we knew from Flint's file card and earlier portrayals. Well, aside from one random tweak that, if I'm honest, felt kinda unnecessary. In this continuity, Flint's backstory is fleshed out a little more. From a young age, he was the picture of responsibility, caring for his alcoholic mother, putting everyone else's needs above his own, and burying his grief in study and discipline. Growing up in Kansas and eventually still becoming a Rhodes Scholar, Flint made something of himself through sheer drive and intellect. Then comes the tweak. In college, Flint had a girlfriend named Claire Austin, who left him, but not knowing she was pregnant with his daughter. You guessed it, Marissa Fairborn. Now, look, personally, I've always preferred the idea that Lady Jaye is Marissa's mom, but I get what IDW was going for here. Making Marissa the child of an estranged, broken relationship gives the two a lot more emotional friction. You couldn't really pull that off if her parents were Flint and Lady Jaye, arguably the most stable couple in GI Joe's history. So, ex-college sweetheart, it is. But what really sets IDW's Flint apart from his previous incarnations isn't just the family drama. It's how that relationship pulls him into something much bigger. Because this version of Marissa also works closely with the Transformers as part of the EDC as well. And let's just say she's got a strangely close working relationship with a certain former Decepticon turned aspiring screenwriter, Thundercracker. That's right, Flint, father-in-law to a Seeker. Who would have thought? I'm just kidding. They didn't get married. But let me tell you, putting aside all the physical details on how such a relationship would actually work, there seems to be a whole lot of Thunder-Rissa shippers out there. I'm just saying, if Brawn and CoverGirl could do it... Okay, sorry, I know, off tangent. So yeah, thanks to his connection to Marissa, Flint ends up front and center as both a GI Joe operative and a representative of Earth in IDW's shared GI Joe Transformers continuity. He becomes part of a human Cybertronian coalition managing alien relations and galactic politics, with missions ranging from helping establish a new home on Earth for the Junkions called Little Cybertron, to the defense of Earth's induction into the Council of Worlds. And through all the chaos, Flint makes it all the way to the arrival of the Chaos Bringer himself, Unicron, and ultimately, while protecting the President of the United States, survives, thanks to the help of the Junkions, because apparently it pays to oversee the construction of a new home for displaced Cybertronians. Now, speaking of survival, given Flint's long-standing status as one of G.I. Joe's no-nonsense alpha dudes, you know, the kind of guy who could easily put a certain non-deodorant-using masked ranger in his place, it's no surprise that he's managed to stick around and appear in just about every major adaptation of the franchise, or at least the ones I feel are worth talking about. From the gritty, hard-edged G.I. Joe Resolute, to the reimagined on-the-run tone of G.I. Joe Renegades, and even his big screen debut in G.I. Joe Retaliation, Flint has continued to be present with almost every new take on the Joe universe. First up, G.I. Joe Resolute, where Flint takes on more of a background role. He's present, he's competent, and he's part of the final assault against Cobra in Springfield. And that's pretty much it. No major spotlight, no memorable lines, but hey, at least he didn't die, which already puts him ahead of poor Bazooka and Major Blood. He gets a much bigger spotlight in G.I. Joe Renegades, which reimagines the Joes before they were officially G.I. Joe. The show follows a small band of fugitives, Duke, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, and company, on the run from both Cobra and, ironically, the US military itself, led by none other than Flint. In this version, Flint's been reinterpreted as a first lieutenant in Army intelligence, more bureaucrat than commando. He serves as a determined antagonist chasing the Renegades after the destruction of Cobra Pharmaceuticals. His connection to Duke runs deep, with flashbacks hinting at a shared football past and a mix of rivalry and mutual respect. While Flint comes off as overbearing and by the book, his integrity still shows through. He protects the Renegades' families, refuses to pull the trigger when he's got a clean shot at Duke, and even teams up with them when Cobra becomes the bigger threat. He's also joined by Lady Jaye, whose loyalties are, let's say, complicated. Officially, she's on Flint's side, but unofficially, she's helping Duke and the Renegades slip through his fingers every chance she gets. Then we get to the live-action movie G.I. Joe Retaliation, where we meet a much younger Flint, played by actor DJ Cotrona. This version joins the team right before most of them are wiped out in a surprise Cobra airstrike, orchestrated by Zartan posing as the US president. Flint, of course, survives and joins Roadblock, the new team leader, to, well, retaliate. Honestly, there's not a whole lot to say about this version either. He doesn't even wear his signature beret at all. I guess he looks the part though, of a generic young rookie soldier, which really fits Flint's character to a T. But ultimately, he doesn't get to do much. In fact, you could have swapped him out for, Chuckles, and I doubt anybody would have noticed. With that being said, I'm pretty sure what most of you awesome viewers would notice is if I ended this video right here, right now, without talking about the toys. So let's get to them, shall we? The very first Flint figure was released in 1985 as part of the fourth wave of Joes. His codename, Flint, is often believed to be a nod to writer Flint Dille, who worked on both the GI Joe and Transformers animated series back in the 80s. But the name also fits for another reason. Like the actual rock, Flint is hard and durable, able to take pressure without breaking. But when struck the right way, he can splinter into razor-sharp edges, the kinds early humans used to make weapons and cutting tools. He can even produce sparks to start fires when hit against steel. Tough, sharp, dependable, and capable of igniting action when things heat up. A perfect description for Flint the Joe, if you ask me. Flint's real name, Dashiell R. Fairbairn, was originally planned as Dashiell Fairbairn, a clever nod to both Dashiell Hammett, author of the Maltese Falcon, and William Ewart Fairbairn, the co-inventor of the Fairbairn-Sykes fighting knife. Anyway, Flint's original figure definitely stood out with his trademark beret, a look we hadn't seen since the original Ranger Stalker, and despite pretty basic face sculpts back in the day, his smug, confident grin. But what really caught my attention as a kid though was his weapon of choice. I wasn't exactly an expert on firearms at the time, so Flint's shotgun looked, well, a little underwhelming. To me, it resembled less a weapon and more of a fold-up umbrella. Still, between his cool, no-nonsense uniform with bullets streaming down each side and the effortless swagger displayed on his face, Flint quickly became one of my favorites. That original design was strong enough to stand the test of time, getting a Tiger Force repaint in 1988 before Flint received his first major redesign in 1991, when he traded in his traditional military look for something a little more neon, and his trusty shotgun for a water-squirting one as the commander of the Joe's new anti-pollution squad, the Eco Warriors. And before the Real American Hero line wrapped up in 1994, we'd see a little dialed-back version of Flint with some questionable headgear, one last time as part of the Battle Corps subline. What's worth mentioning though is that, had the line continued, there were plans and even prototypes for one more figure of Flint as a ninja, or to be more specific, the original Ninja Commando, well before Roadblock came into the picture. Yeah, let's just say it's probably for the best that that one stayed in the dojo. Flint returned in a big way as part of the 25th anniversary line that saw a plethora of modern versions of our favorite warrant officer. Vintage look, Tiger Force, Cobra disguise, Resolute, DJ Cotrona, and even Eco Warrior Flint as part of an exclusive 2014 International GI Joe Convention Zombie Initiative box set. And finally, in 2022, Flint hit the big time with a larger 6-inch figure in the GI Joe classified line, sporting a modern look that wasn't too much of a departure from the classic one. A year later, this guy was naturally repainted in Tiger Force colors with the extra touch of some camo on his face. Definitely going against tradition there. But for sticklers of tradition, a retro-carded Flint that was slavish to the OG figure was finally released in 2025. Which is pretty cool, but to be honest, I kinda prefer the modern take a little bit more. The retro's face just seems a little bit odd. But as excellent as those classified versions of Flint were, what all of them failed to satisfy would be those who wanted a tune-accurate warrant officer. Something that Super 7 came so close to giving us with their Ultimates version in 2023. I mean, look at these renders, they look amazing. Unfortunately, they kinda cheaped out on the final product, looking to save a little moolah by not painting his face and thinking we wouldn't care. But I mean, that plastic sheen on his face just really ruined the figure for me, and no amount of extra hands, weapons, or shovel could make up for this. And speaking of shovels, I'm sure one of those would come in mighty handy for a Joe who just loves going through tunnels. If you want to know more about the GI Joe EOD Specialist Tunnel Rat and his special little connection to the godfather of GI Joe, I've got his story over here. Or if you want to see my latest story, you can find it over here. Either way, thanks for watching, and I hope to hear from you in the comments below. Go ahead and tell me your story.